So hello and welcome to episode 8 of our Python and Django project-based tutorial series. In this episode, we'll be going over episode 8, which is MyHours. As you saw in the last episode, we finished our new hours page, which allows us to enter our logs into the system. And now we will be displaying them through our MyHours page. I hope you guys enjoy this one. So basically, as you can see, we have a place to log our community service hours. We created this new hours page with a service date hours and description function. We can log this and it will go into our database and save it under that user. What's up everybody? In today's episode, we will be going over a new feature which is called the MyHours feature. So right now I'm on the finished system, which you can access by going to stephenhowe.pythonanywhere.com. Last time we stopped at creating this new hours tab where we can enter our service date, our hours, and our description. Once we log this, to be redirected to a MyHours page. And this is what we will be focusing on in this episode. For now, you can ignore the reports on the right side here. Today, we will just be focusing on this left side right here. And a few things when I first look at this page is, first we need to track how many logs a user has, adding them all up and finding total hours, and finding what their award level is. Now you might be wondering, what is this award level? Well, if you go to our community service hours ranks, we will need to create a new table called the community service hours ranks. And here, we can just create a simple table setting a certain amount of hours to a specific award level. And for example, if I have 50, I am bronze, 250 hours would make me silver, and 500 community service hours, I would get the gold award. So heading back to my hours, 4 plus 2 plus 3 isn't greater than 50. In fact, it's only 9 hours, which means I have no award. Another cool thing that you can see is that our logs are in a post format, such as on social media websites like Instagram, Facebook, etc. We will have basic information, and a cool feature actually is if you click their hours amount, you can then update or delete it. And finally, another thing on the back end of this is that we need to make sure that whoever is updating or deleting these logs is actually the logged in user. So now let's get started by actually creating this in our system right now. Right now in our project, we just finished our new hours, as you can see here. And if I click log, it will redirect me to the MyHours page. So based on our methodology we learned in episode 1, we first need to create a URL which describes this page. I also want to add a menu for this MyHours page. As you can see here, we are missing that. So let's get started. First thing I want to do is go to our urls.py file and create the URL for our MyHours page. So this is very simple. You could just use the same format that we used above, actually for our new hour. And I'll call this post/my, and then I'll call this MyHours view like this. And then finally, for our name we use in our program, we call it post-my. So here we just set our URL, we defined its corresponding view and the name that we are going to be used in our code. As you can see, there is a red underline on this MyHours view. That's because we haven't defined it yet. And next, as I said, we want to go to our base. And in our base, we want to add that menu on the header. You can just uncomment this line right here, which is our MyHours header tab. Now we'll go over the views for our MyHours function. This is going to be a pretty long segment, but we'll start easy by first adding this code. As you can see here, it's basically the same as our new hours view. First, we define our class and its name, and it's actually a list view because if you think about the MyHours, it's basically just a collection of all the posts that we already have. Therefore, the model is from post. The template name we can set to m_post_my, just so it goes in order. This doesn't really matter right now. We're going to be getting our posts and ordering them by service date, and we'll be paginating them by 5 logs per page. As you can see, there is a red underline under list view, and that's because we haven't imported it into our views.py file. So all we have to do is come up to our imports, and under from django.views.generic import, we can add list view like this. And now if we scroll back down, list view is no longer underlined in red. Next, we want to make sure we only get the logged in user's data. Otherwise, MyHours wouldn't make sense because it is MyHours. It's the logged in user's hours. And therefore, we'll add this bit of code right here. So it's basically, we're getting the self, which is from the logged in user. We're getting their data. And there are 2 possibilities for this. Either the user is the logged in user, or there's an error and we get a 404 error. Most likely, this will always be true because the logged in user should be the only one that can see this My Hours page, right? Because our system is special. You first have to log in. But just in case there is an issue, we will add this get object 404. And then we will return filtered posts that are from that user only. So this way they don't see anybody else's posts in their My Hours. Again, since this is underlined in red, we need to import this. And from Django.shortcuts import render, add a comma, and add get object or 404. And now we can see there's one more red underline, which is user, because it doesn't know what this user is. So we need to import our user table. You can do that by adding user to the from.models import. Now if we scroll back down, everything is normal. Now we want to get the context for our MyHours page. And what I mean by context is what's going to be on that page. So if we go back to our new hours, we can see that it is actually just a form. But in the form, there was a service date, there were the hours, and the description. For our MyHours, we want to have the user's data, each of their posts, and their award. And the award is where we will actually have to create a new table. But first, let's just add the stuff that we already have. So now let's add this bit of code here. For our context, we will get the user's data, all of their posts, their total hours, and the category. And the category is basically the award that they have. Right now, we don't need to worry about this because we haven't set our category table. But let's take care of this sum real quick. The sum for our total hours is basically just adding up all the hours values for each of our posts. So how can we get this sum function in our code? Well, the good thing about Django is that something like this is already created for us. We don't need to write code for this sum function. We can just import it from the Django library. And we can do that with this line right here. From django.db.models import sum. So that function will take care of the sum for us. So now the code will automatically add all the hours value in each of these posts. Post.aggregate means adding them all up into a list, and then giving us the integer value for our total hours. And now let's take care of these categories. So for these categories, we want to make a new table. First, you have your hours total and then the corresponding award name. So we'll go to models and add this here. So basically we have our category class, which is just a model, and the total hours, which we can get as an integer field. The total hours basically just means how many hours does each award take. For example, it was the 50, 200, and 500 that we saw at the beginning of the video. Next, we have our text, which is basic. And then finally, when we maintain our categories in admin, we want the categories list to show as a category text and not the object IDs. Now, what this means is that when we go to maintain these tables, for example, in the future, if we change our category and their corresponding total hour amounts, if we go to our finish system and we go to something called /admin, so this is something that I actually haven't showed you guys yet. So if we create an admin account, we can then access this Django administration, which is already created by Python and Django. And if we log in, you can see that there's a user interface for us to change our tables, such as our users, our categories, and our profiles. Now, the one we want to add are the categories right here. Now, as you can see, we have 3 tiers. If I want to, for example, change the silver tier from 250 hours to, let's say, 300 hours, I can do that easily. For example, if I hit save here, and I head back to our finish system, and I go to our ranks, you can see that silver has been automatically updated 300 hours. With Django administration, we can easily change this safely and conveniently through the web. So I change it back to 250. As you can see, this will automatically update back to 250. So now once we have created a new model, we must do our manage.py cycle again. And so what we will do is run manage.py task. Oh, and this is a really good reminder. The name MyHoursView is not defined. This is because we have errors in our code right now. So for example, we should comment out this categories first. and find everywhere where there are issues. So back in our URLs, we also have to comment this out, just for now. Now if we migrate again, everything should be working fine. We can make our migrations. As you can see, it has successfully created the model category. SQL migrate this. You'll add your app name, which is ours, and then given this value right here, you want to put that in 0003. And then finally migrate one more time. So now this categories table should be working. If we refresh our database on the right, we can see that the categories is in here. Right now, there's nothing in here because we haven't set any values to it. And this is where our admin comes into play. So now if I go to our system right here, you also want to uncomment this line right here in our base. So now if I log in with our super user account, I can now see our site administration. And in order to get our categories to be shown in our admin, we must go to the admin.py file. And here, create and edit the category and profile tables. So now if I head back to our online admin thing, we can now edit our categories and profiles. So if I go into categories, now I want to add a new category. For example, I'll set bronze to 50, save and add another. I'll set silver to 250, and then gold to 500. And that's been successfully added. So now that we've finished that, we have added all the context that we need, which are our users' data, their posts, their total hours, and their categories. Speaking of that, we can now uncomment this line and all the corresponding lines that we've uncommented. We now want to import our category table just so that there are no errors. And we can do this right here from our models. And then add this long bit of code here. And basically what it is we want to list our categories in order. Now it looks very complicated, but it actually is just a bunch of if-then statements. Basically, it's just a bunch of these loops to determine the different zones that our category hours are in. And now down here, which are a bunch of if, elif, else statements. So here, we will get the user's award level. This is actually the logic behind that. So if their hours doesn't equal to 0 and it doesn't equal to category 1, 2, or 3, then their category table is empty. Meaning, in this scenario, it is between 0 and 50. And then you just use some inequalities to set their total hours between 1 and 2, 2 and 3, 3 and so forth. And based on that, you can determine if they're category 1, 2, or 3. And then finally, we want to return our context. And I'll leave this on this screen so you can read the comments. So now we're done with our views. And although these views looked very complicated and it took a lot of time, I think the logic behind it was pretty simple and easy to understand. And to fix this issue with the MyHours view being underlined in red, all we have to do now is import it, since we have created this view actually. So now this is gone. Now let's create our HTML file, which we can do by copying this, going to our templates and adding a new one, and deleting this code here. Now the HTML for our MyHours page is very similar to something like the profile, because first we'll extend our base, add our crispy form tags, load static, everything similar like that. Then we need to add our lineup 3, which is our H3 class. And what this corresponds to is just this line up here. So we can set that by typing it in MyHours, then the variable pagination count logs. Now what this actually does is shows how many logs we have, because our paginator count is basically just counting how many logs we have. Our total hours, our category, and then adding words behind them, such as award, hours behind the hours, because the variable is only this part right here. Next, we want to output each post. So that includes the picture, all the profile information, which is very similar to this actually right here. If you take a look at these two sections. And then now down here, we want to show something called the post detail, which is just the post hours, but as a hyperlink with the color blue. So this way we can click on it. And then description, everything is similar there. Next, we add our pagination lines here. And that's the end of our HTML page. So this HTML page is actually very simple because it's basically just adding one line right here of styling and then just listing out every post. We can do this by using a for loop. The pagination is also very easy because all you have to do is set some loops in order to count how many pages there are going to be. So now on our finished system, this is what it looks like. I don't have any logs right now, so I'll add one real quick. 4 hours doing trash pickup. And now we see that there's a problem. The post detail is not found yet. And that's because we haven't done that bit of code yet. It doesn't know what post detail is. And that's actually this line right here that I just talked about. So all I have to do is uncomment this. So as you can see now, this looks perfect. I have one log, a total of 4 hours, and no award. And as you can see, this trash pickup is actually highlighted in blue, and that's because we took away the post detail. So the styling actually corresponded with this. But once we add our hours with our post detail, and our post detail is basically just the update and delete functions. Once we add that, this will be just like the one we showed in the beginning of the video. So now let's get through this one last step and we are done for today. So first, I can now uncomment this post detail since I'm going to be working on it now. And for post detail, we need URL, view, HTML, all of that. So we have to restart the cycle basically. So for our URL, I will add this. I will now add these 3 URLs. And as you can see, we have some errors right here with our views. But that is to be expected because once we create these views and add them to our imports, it will be fine. Basically, I'll go over what this is. We have our post detail URL, which is right when we finish clicking that blue hours hyperlink. It will take us to the page that offers us update or delete options. If we click the update, we obviously go to the update URL. If we click the delete one, we go to the delete URL. And one thing that you can see is a little bit different is this int::pk. Now what this means is that Django is expecting an integer from our post because technically we are taking one of those posts which has an integer value and it's going to transform that value into a variable pk. So what this is, which I'll show you on our completed system, if I click one of these, it will see, as you can see, the link changed to post/17, which means this is the 17th post in our system. So basically it turned that integer value into the variable pk, which then it would display here. So for example, the integer was 17 for that post. It transformed the pk variable into 17, and now it shows as post/17. So now we will work on our views, which are the hour detail view, hours update view, and hours delete view. Now these three views are very similar. First, we have the hours detail view, which is just using the model post and a template, very simple. We will now need to put our detail view into our imports, and that goes here. For hours update view, it uses the model post, the form new hours, and a basic template. And we need to add these 2 imports. User passes test mixin and the update view. Now this update view is again another thing that Django has already created for us. User pass test mixin is just that it passed the test, allowing the user to update it. Because as I said earlier, only the logged in user can update their own logs. And same thing down here with the delete view. So the crazy thing is there's actually no code in this part that has to do with anything with deleting. It's actually all built into here, and we just have to import it. That's the great thing about Django. And I'll come up here and add the user passes text mixin. Over here, now I'll add the update view and the delete view. And now everything is normal. We just need to create these 3 HTMLs. So now let's add these HTMLs to our code. Now first add our detail view, then I'll add our hours update view, and finally I will add the post confirm delete view. And with these 3 HTMLs now complete, we can now go back to our URLs and add these views to our imports. So we have the hours detail view, hours update view, and hours delete view. Now as you can see, the reds are taken away. Now we can close our URLs, close our views actually, and now let's work on these last 3 HTML pages. Now let's first get working on our detailed HTML, which is this one right here. So as you can see, it is very similar to our profile, as you can see here with our image, our first name, last name, service date, etc. But the difference is down here. We have two buttons, which are the update button and then the delete button. And obviously we will have the hours and description shown as well. But these won't be highlighted since we're already inside of that. Next, we'll move on to the confirm delete. And the confirm delete includes just a basic class, which has the delete button and text, which shows, are you sure you want to delete this? And we'll add our hours as a variable here. And then another button for yes delete or cancel, just as a confirmation. Because we don't need a confirmation for update because that doesn't harm anything. But we need a confirmation for delete because technically we are deleting an entry in our system. And we want to make sure that the user doesn't accidentally do this. So that's the difference between update and delete. But it's very simple. It's basically just a button and the delete function, which is already created by Django. That's why there's nothing has to do with delete in here. So now let's run this system. Once we run it again, let's see if everything works this first time around. So as you can see, I'll make a new log for 3 hours and I did beach cleanup. I log in and it takes me back to the home page. So that is one thing that we have to change. We want it to redirect it to our MyHours, correct? So now if we go back to our MyHours, as you can see, we have 2 logs, total of 7 hours, which is correct because 4 plus 3. Our posts are displayed in a blog form, and we have no award yet since we have not passed 50 hours. If I click on one of these hours, it takes me to update and delete. I can choose to update it, such as I actually did 5 hours, and now I have a total of 8 hours, which is correct. If I want to delete this post, it gives me a confirmation with the correct amount of hours. I hit yes delete, and oh, here is a problem. Now, why does this show up? It's because we redirected it to post in my. But if you remember, our URL is not called post in my. For example, if I go delete, as you can see, it wants to delete the second post, but it is actually not there. So that means our problem has nothing to do with the delete function. It has to do with the redirection after that. So our post is now actually gone, as you can see here. So let's quickly finish up these 2 small issues and we will be done. I will start these small changes by going back to our reviews. In our reviews, as you can see, after our delete, our success URL was basically is the redirect URL. It says go to posted/my. This was in the URLs. As you can see, our link is actually post/my, not posted. So that is a little typo. We just delete those 2 words and we are fine here. Next, we want to add a redirect after we add new hours. And in fact, we actually showed you this in the last episode when we did new hours. But since we haven't created our MyHours page yet, we just redirected to home. So this is actually in our models.py, as you can see from class post. So I want to change this home redirect into MyHours. Now we want to see what the word we used for MyHours was. Now, obviously it wasn't MyHours like this. I think we named it post-my. But we can also check that just to be sure. And as you can see, their name is post-my for our MyHours view. Now again, this is for models, which means we technically should have to migrate this again. But let's test it if we don't. So if I refresh this page, I go to delete this log. As you can see, hitting cancel works. If I go to delete it, it works, which means we actually don't have to migrate it. And that's actually because this little small change here has nothing to do with the table itself. So now we have finished our MyHours page. From the beginning, as we can see, it should look something like this. And after today's episode, in our tutorial, one that I walk you guys through with, it looks like this, which is very similar, which is correct. As you can see, our basic information is there, and this sentence up here is correct. We can now update and delete it. And our styling is correct with these blog formatted posts. The only thing we are missing now is the reports, which we will talk about 2 episodes from now. In the next episode, we will go over school hours, which is posts from every single user in the system. Right now, we only have MyHours. So I'll see you guys in the next episode, which will be next month. Bye. So thank you for watching the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We recently just released some new Redcap merch, which I'll put the link in the description, and on the screen right now you can actually see some of the drop list items. Right now I'm wearing a special edition hockey cat shirt, which is available in the gray colorway on our web store. There's only 14 stock, so it's a limited edition, and I hope you guys will like it. So if you joined this episode, please like and subscribe, and if you want to go cop some Redcap merch, you can do so. Make sure to watch episode 9, which comes out next month, about our school hours page. See you then.